it's really important for governments, for CEOs to just not think about themselves. Putting it as bluntly as possible, I don't want my homeland of Samoa to be sinking and dying before I do. That is nothing no one wants. And actually acknowledging the weight of this and knowing that it shouldn't be put onto solely the shoulders of our youth. And that's such an important thing to acknowledge. Um, Although we are the futures of tomorrow, you still need to be making decisions today to ensure that our futures are safe and safeguarded. And so I definitely feel like everyone needs to be really looking at themselves, their privileges, what they can do, how they can do it, and really thinking about the most vulnerable they see in this society, and most likely the most vulnerable that they don't see.
We've been listening to the SDG advocates in conversation at the SDG Action Zone today, talking about the need for businesses and governments to think globally, especially through this climate crisis. Welcome back to the Global Goals Studio. Now we turn actually to the role of business in the Sustainable Development Goals. While governments, the UN and NGOs all have critical responsibilities in implementing the SDGs, they cannot do it alone. Both resources and financial support from the private sector are needed to achieve the SDGs.
With this panel, we explore what makes for effective partnerships between business, the UN, and others, and how the SDGs provide opportunity for business to pursue both profit and purpose. Joining us are Charlotte Kirby, Vice President of Global Strategic Relations at Salesforce.org, Sanda Ojiambo, CEO and Executive Director of the United Nations Global Compact, and Charlotte Petri Gornitzka, the Deputy Executive Director of Partnerships at UNICEF. I'd like to start with you, Charlotte Kirby. As I know, you and your company have partnered with many different entities across various sectors. Can you talk about what makes for an effective partnership between businesses as it relates to partnering with the UN and other sectors?
Of course. So one of the things that we've seen over the last few years is the true evolution of partnerships and what that means. We've also seen the rise of the socially conscious company, which is becoming such a key topic as CEOs are trying to navigate this new concept of the stakeholder economy. How do you balance the value that you must give to a shareholder also with the value that you must give to your stakeholders? And how do you give back to your communities where you live and work? Partnerships are a key part to this. As those socially conscious organizations come together, they also have businesses with missions. But businesses can't achieve socially conscious missions without being in partnerships with the people on the ground, with the agencies, with the organizations. So it's now no longer about just a corporate giving a check. It's about how does a corporate bring all of the resources that they have to bear as a socially conscious organization to achieve something that is important to them as a social-based mission in partnership with an organization that can help them achieve that social-based mission. And that's very different to what it was 10 years ago when it really was a check-based philanthropic model.
Right, that's a great point about partnerships. Charlotte Gornitzka, as we think about those partnerships, any discussions about the SDGs, of course, now come into the context of COVID-19. Obviously, the coronavirus has had a devastating impact on the SDGs trajectory, particularly for the goals involving improving child health and well-being. So specifically about your work, how has COVID-19 impacted your priorities, and what does it mean for this approach to partnerships with business that Charlotte was talking about?
I think it means a lot, but let me start by saying we didn't know to start with how children were affected. We actually thought, they are not directly affected, so will they be affected? But we learned very quickly that they are so affected by the consequences. The first thing we saw was the need to focus on education because everything was locked down, and we saw everywhere in developing countries and developed countries that we had to rethink how we do education. But we also saw the need for very basic health interventions, and we think through our priorities going forward, and they are very much, if you will, core priorities for UNICEF. We will have to focus a lot on vaccines to make sure that they are, equally distributed. We need to focus a lot on connectivity, because young children who cannot enter into the internet will be completely lost. And we see the opportunity actually in this COVID time. The industry, private sector has invested a lot in making, remote learning an opportunity. So we will seize that opportunity and work together with private sector to make sure that children around the world are connected and that quality education is improved. Mental well-being, again, all over the world we've seen that we need to focus on that. And simple things. In the start, we really need to educate ourselves on the importance of hand washing, water, sanitation, and hygiene. So very basic priorities, if you will, but completely different executed in partnerships with private sector.